Lloyd, acting as the man of the house, wasted no time in visiting the intruder, which ultimately caused the intruder to focus on escaping. However, with the young man's magic, it would be impossible, especially without a spell of the air barrier class. So now that he had her cornered, Lloyd wanted to know what the intruder was up to, but she quickly apologized for having to deal with a little one, as he wasn't her target. Gradually, the prince began to feel strange headaches and dizziness. In front of him, there was a poison disguised as a flower, but he thought it would be nothing that a healing and purifying spell couldn't cure. However, the intruder assured him that it wasn't so simple and multiplied the poison until Lloyd was writhing in pain on the ground. She kept insisting that her poison was so potent that no one could purify it, which made Lloyd doubt, as purification spells could neutralize any possible poison, and if that wasn't possible, there was only one solution. It was a new poison, and she transmuted it with mana, taking the form of a butterfly. Lloyd also remembered that few in this world were born with a particular type of mana, and those with unique mana were called scourges. The intruder confirmed that he was correct, identifying herself as the poisonous scourge, who had been making poison after poison since birth. If he wanted a name, he could call her Ren, the poisonous moth. Despite the venom, Lloyd found it fascinating, especially when she managed to break through his barrier with a powerful kick. So, Rim reaffirmed that he shouldn't be in such a state, was already being critical since she only hit him with a small dose of poison, and he wouldn't die from it. Although he might suffer for a few days, without delay, she left the building, which the prince found great because he had learned something new. Although Grimm was worried about the poison, Lloyd revealed that he was using the healing breath spell, so he was slowly healing, and Grimm damage couldn't do much more. Still, Grimm wanted to know if he was healing because he stopped fighting the stranger. The intelligent Grimm explains that it was for the best, as this way, she would lead him to her hiding place. He was interested in these kinds of people, remembering that Silpha had seen strange posters talking about 6 members called the Assassin's Guild, and after today's encounter, he knew each member likely had unique abilities. He could have a lot of fun if he found them. So he quickly began to track Ren's movements because she could split space in two. With this in mind, it was easy for him to know where such a peculiar person was. They didn't take long to follow her because they might encounter the rest of the assassins. Just then, Silva and Shiro came out looking for them. When Ren reached her hiding place, one of them asked if they had really found her and if she had fled without finishing her opponent. Rem assured them she hadn't hurt him, as he was just a defenseless child. And she began to talk about magic swords, but one of the assassins didn't like her acting as their leader, who had abandoned them. The time for fighting was over when one of the assassins discovered someone watching them from above. Obviously Lloyd, who had to come down, while Rem wondered why the poison hadn't knocked him out by now. As Lloyd approached, the assassins recognized him as the 7th Prince, known for making powerful swords. Understanding that he always pretended to be a normal person but was actually very ambitious, now that he knew about the Assassin's Guild, they couldn't let him live. For some reason, in his excitement, Lloyd deactivated the magic barrier, scaring Grimm a lot, but Lloyd knew they all had unknown abilities and didn't want to play to find out, as it would be boring. With the same Tao pose, the boy invited them to defeat him, prompting one of them to accept the challenge at lightning speed. As the prince, he managed to block a good number of blows. The assassin could hardly avoid them now. The prince's new martial arts, but in reality, Tao's trail was doing all the work, as he had incredible one-on-one defense. Lloyd noticed that his enemy had a strange flexibility, which he confirmed when the assassin managed to get close and land a blow using his flexibility. That's when the assassin showed us his incredible flexibility since birth and introduced himself as the twisted scourge called Babylon. Lloyd knew that kind of flexibility, even with magic, would be very difficult to achieve, so he was facing a unique body. Without realizing it, another of the assassins, just by asking him to collapse, managed to do it, to avoid problems. Another assassin introduced himself as Crow, a scourge who made his words come true, so to avoid trouble, he didn't say much, and before receiving a blow, Lloyd enhanced his body with more mana, practically breaking the curse by force. But not everything would be so simple, as Galilea the spider could transmute her mana into sticky fluid, which was too strong. Lloyd had to leave his clothes behind to escape, and in the air, another assassin almost finished him off many times with all his cuts. However, since she didn't give him any. She ended up injuring one of her legs and then sent the wound to the boy, presenting herself as Talia, the one with 100 colors, who shared her pain with the rest, something that Lloyd found incredible since he didn't know how she did it. And although the assassins assured the boy that he had dug his own grave, he showed no fear, managing to heal his leg in a second. The strangest thing of all was that it was a practically instantaneous healing, but Lloyd noticed that the healing also reached Talia. So the boy wanted to know how much they shared, and even if he hurt her, they would both be hurt. This excited the prince, who with Silpha's trail wanted to continue playing with all the assassins. Some recognized Silpha's pose, as she had defeated them in the past. And when the boy launched himself, they all dispersed. After all, they were against a prince, a child magician who used swords with karate, and nothing made sense. So the first one to be injured was the one who was flexible, and Lloyd understood that he relaxed just before receiving the impact. So if he didn't, he was like a normal person. So when both Crow and Galileo went after him, Lloyd managed to dodge the cursed words of the assassin so that Galileo would receive them. And with a 2-for-1, he sent them flying, leaving only Crow, who couldn't do anything against Lloyd's swords, and he defeated him before he could say any spell. But he still understood that they were about to tell him he was going bald, which made him wonder if he would have looked like an egg if they had let him talk. And when Galilea couldn't control her anger, she forgot that she was stuck to Talia's clothes, which ended up coming apart due to the brute force of her companion. And despite the scant clothing, Lloyd didn't hesitate to go for his heart, but Talia, while dodging the attack, said that it made no sense to fight her since they were connected, so he would also suffer the damage. And seeing Lloyd's face, who just wanted to test who resisted more, we saw that Talia knew she had a madman in front of her, who threw a wall at her, and they both received the same damage, although one of them was enjoying it a little more than the other. In the end, Galileo managed to catch the boy, who put on his clothes again to escape. And with a quick concentration, from here, we see Tao's thunder crash executed by the prince, who now went after Rin to poison her well. Even with the little strength Galilea had left, he asked her not to play with it, as she wasn't currently using her power properly and could poison everyone. This reminded the prince that technically no one controls their powers perfectly, and Galilea herself eventually accepted this. After all, if they managed to do so, they wouldn't have to live as criminals and would never have been called scourges. But this time, at lightning speed, Lloyd didn't let himself be captured and attacked Rin with electricity, forcing her to fight since she wouldn't let her friends fall in battle. But for some reason, the electrified one hadn't suffered any damage, even claiming that for the first time his mana was coming under control. This was thanks to the spell the boy had engraved on his body, as he had a disadvantage from birth. So for the first time, he tried to engrave a spell on his body instead of a sword, which seemed to work quite well. This made Galilea cry since she finally didn't have her curse anymore, and the boy made it clear that she still had it, but that now it could be controlled. So he invited the rest of the assassins to be enchanted, and they didn't hesitate to accept to understand that it really worked. Even Crowl could now speak and was too happy to see if the prince really had left his powers. As always, Talia wanted to try with her cheek, which worked wonders when she wanted to, although from a distance, Rin didn't seem very happy with an intruder that no one asked for help, and when everyone started treating him as one more of the group, Rin became much more upset. But they knew it was the least they could do for someone who had freed them from so many years of problems with their powers. Anyway, Rena remembered that he was making weapons and had infiltrated their base, so he was their enemy. But Grimm defended him, saying that this was a free world, but he didn't want a mini-goat telling him what to do. Anyway, Lloyd was just eager to know how much he could learn from them, but while washing her clothes, Galileo wanted to tell him a story. That wasn't of Lloyd's interest, not even in the slightest, but she told him that their leader could teleport, which caught the little one interest. That's why we see their leader called Jade, who recounted that by mistake that day, he got lost using his powers in a place with a lot of sand and giant towers. But now that he had returned, he wanted to show everyone a coin he had found, which apparently was the symbol of the Scourges. But that day, he gave it the meaning of the Assassin's Guild, which surprised his whole group, as they weren't so sure. But Jade knew that if they did the shady missions that no one else wanted to do and left that coin at their jobs, everyone would know of their existence, so someday they could live in the daylight like the rest. And unintentionally, he teleported again. Anyway, Galilea continued to recount that until recently, they found out that Lordos was preparing for war, and suddenly a small portal appeared with a letter, which minutes later, Silpha very concerned to find Lloyd, but he wasn't there. He left a letter saying that he would visit Lordos with the Guild of Assassins, a letter that his brother read trembling because he knew that the situation with Lordos was more than bad, so they would have to avoid war at all costs. But when Silpha showed Lloyd's clothes to her brother, which